Good morning, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. Today we have the Queens, Nisa. Today we have the Queens, Nassau and Suffolk County weekly market update. I'm here with Mo. We have Dina on the line. Let's go. So for single family in the Queens, we have Dina, who's gonna help us out over here.
All right, guys. So we were looking at last week. Sorry, I haven't done this in a while. So we're looking at new.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, last week, and then last week.
Yeah. So new listing last week. We're looking at 113 new listings that came on the market and were sold for the average of 907,307. 2 weeks ago of this year, we have 130 new listings. And then last year, we had 103 listings. And when we look at under contracts for last week, we are looking at 66 houses that got under contract. Of this week, we have 86. So it's like 20 houses more. And then when you look at last week of this week, actually, of last year, we're only looking at 8 houses. So it's a huge difference. And then when we look at the sold houses, we're looking at 42 houses compared to this week, 62 houses. And then last year, this week, we are looking at 57 houses. So not really a huge difference.
Yeah, not really a huge difference. You can tell that the Queens market is really picking up. 66 2 weeks ago. This week we had 86. It's starting to move again.
Correct.
So next we have multifamilies in Queen. Mo, you want to take care of this?
So last week, last 2 weeks. All right, so for multifamilies, new listings, it was 1,090,000. For last year, it was 1,090,000. Last week, it was 1.1. And for last 2 weeks,
we normally say the numbers first of how much sold, and then the average price.
All right. So for it was 1.2 for the last 2 weeks. Under contract, around 706,000, 1,029,000, and then last 2 weeks was 1,093,000. So sold was 8,072, 1.1 mil, and then 1,061,000.
So what we can see from this is the multifamilies in Queens, we have 83 new listings 2 weeks ago. Last week we had 69 versus last week, we had 90 new listings. Under contract, 47 2 weeks ago. Last week we had 45 versus last week where we only had 3 new homes under contract. Sold, we had 21 homes sold 2 weeks ago versus 27 last week compared to the 16 last week. So next we have Nassau, single family. Condos and co-op, I'm sorry. So I'll do this one. In Queens, we had 163 new listings 2 weeks ago versus last week where we had 191. Last week, we had 136 new listings on condos and co-op, all for the average price around above 450. Under contract, we had 68 new homes under contract in the last 2 weeks. Last week, we had 108 homes under contract versus last week where we only had 6 under contract. Sold homes, sold condos and co-op, we had 55 2 weeks ago, 75 last week, and 36 last week. Next, we have Nassau. Dina?
All right. Nassau, when we look at new listings, 2 weeks ago, we are looking at 259 houses that came new. Last week, 273. Last year, 329. Under contract, 2 weeks ago, 182. Last week, 204. And last year, 25 houses were under contract. So it is tremendous change. When we look at sold houses, 2 weeks ago, 192 were sold. 2 weeks ago, 224, and then last year, 308.
Next, we have Suffolk. Mo, you want to take care of this one?
Yeah, so new listing last 2 weeks, 380, 378. Sold for, the average was 791. And then last week was 747, 394 sold. Yeah, new listing.
Is there any listing?
Yeah, new listing. Or no, last week was 492, average 620. Under contract, we have 273 from last 2 weeks, which is around 654. Last week was 332, 687 was the average, and then under contract last week was 442. Sold last 2 weeks was 250, 647 was the average, 291. Last week 291, average price was 804, and then 269 was last week, which was 669. Yeah. So last week, you could see a big difference between under contracts. That's about it.
Okay, so that's it, guys. That's our weekly update for Nassau, Queens, and Suffolk. If you have any questions, you know where to find us.